Many people using this online class have received one of my Lino kits. This kit here is my original kit and contains the supplies needed to create basic monochromatic Linocut prints. However, I do have a range of kits and you may be using this class alongside a different kit. So we are going to be using a Lino surface. Lino was originally just available in the form of moulded cork and oils and backed with Hessian. Today this is commonly called Battleship Grey Hessian backed Lino. Battleship Grey Hessian backed Lino, that's right. Although there is also a brown version knocking around, which I believe is just as good. Other surfaces are generally all of a rubber polymer consistency. Whilst these are found in a variety of names and colours, the differences are minimal. You'll come to hear that Lino is often referred to as the block or the surface. So I'm going to be using a 5cm student roller. Rollers in printmaking are also called brayers. The ink I'm going to be using is water-based. Printmaking inks come in many variations, different names, but in essence they are either water-based or oil-based. Water-based inks will clean up with soap and water. Oil-based will need a solvent for cleaning. Water-based inks dry quickly, whilst oil-based take several days to dry. For a seasoned printmaker, the decisions around which ink to use come down to a few things. If you're producing a print series, for example, over 5 prints, maybe 20 or above, and you use a water-based ink, whilst it's quick drying on paper, it's also quick drying when rolled out with the roller. So consider the temperature of your room when you come to do yours using the water-based inks. You don't want it too warm in your room, otherwise your ink is going to dry out before you've had a chance to get a decent print. So with quick drying can be a good option if time is an issue or you don't have the space for drying. In my earlier studio days, I'd have had to pack up and use my space for other things. I couldn't have had 20 prints hanging from an indoor clothesline for days on end. These days I do prefer oil-based inks and I've got the space for drying, but it also means I have more time to work with the ink before it becomes dry and unworkable. So if I was wanting to produce 20 or more prints and I have my ink rolled out, it's not going to dry out in the time it takes to do 20 prints, which can be all day, depending on the size of your print, the type of carve you've done on the lino. A lot of factors come into play. So you're going to hear the term open when referring to ink. So for example, Hawthorne printmakers make a lovely range of inks called stay open inks. They're fantastic to work with, but a pain for drying between colour layers. The initial layer using Hawthorne Stay Open will dry in a matter of days, but thereafter layers that you then put down, even using dryers in with the ink, you can be waiting anything between a few days and a few weeks. So as you can imagine, if you have 5 colours, over 20 prints to do, that can get really problematic. So for learning, let's start with water-based ink, soap and water for cleaning, and a manageable drying time for our space. So sometimes tools vary in the kits, and this is purely down to what I've been able to get in. So today for this we are going to be using these woodcut tools. I've chosen these for what I believe is the best experience for a beginner whilst remaining inside budget, and I will explain a little bit more about the different tools that you can get and what their benefits and perhaps the things that you just need to be aware of with all different types of tools in printmaking, particularly with tools. Price is an indicator of quality, unfortunately. So picking up a packet of tools for under £5, you will find them quite hard to work with. But we'll get into that, because even if you have a beginner set of tools at home, there are things that you can do to you know, work around that and get the best out of the tools that you've got. But we'll get into that in a bit. So tools for woodcut and lino cut, they are interchangeable. However, if you do use these tools for woodcut, you might find that they blunt much quicker when you come back to using them for lino cut, so you will find yourself needing to get a sharpener if that's the case. But for now, and for several prints to come, these are sharp enough and are going to do the trick nicely. So lino blades come in a variety of sizes, generally U gouges, V gouges, chisels or swords. In this pack we've got 2 chisels. We have what's called, in Japanese terms, a sword. Oh, there it is. We have a large U-gouge, small U-gouge, and our V-gouge. It's going to be the U and V gouges that you are going to use the most of as a beginner. These tools take a little bit of practice. They're not to be discounted. People generally only ever stick with these tools. If you can get the hang of these tools, then that will increase the mark making that you can make and your prints in the long term. So for people looking at their own supplies, wondering what to use, let's take a look at the range of tools on the market and talk through what you can expect from them. If you are feeling confident with tools, you can skip this next section. So the most common beginner tool on the market is what's called the red handle tool. This is also going to be a tool that most people will have had experience with in school. Now, there are actually a variety of them out there. So these 2 here, this is a British company called Esdi. I believe you can find quite a lot of Esdi items in Hobbycraft if you have a Hobbycraft near you. And this is a speedball. I believe they're American, but I'm not 100% sure. I found this red handle tool out on the market. It's a very cheap version of Esdi's. As you can see, it's been sort of done on the same shape and size, but it's cheaper, and I imagine it's down to the fact it's got this very flimsy neck that tightens the tool. I would imagine after a long period of time this is going to become quite weak, and I would say that it would be okay for a beginner using the polymer easy carved surfaces, but I imagine as you get a bit further down the line with your lino cut, you probably want to put that aside and try something else. So on the same principle, these will they're what's called interchangeable blades, and so these blades fit into the top, and you screw this down and it holds your blade in place. These blades here are notoriously tricky to work with. There are artists out there that get on with them fine, and the marks that they want to make are produced with this tool. As I said before, the mark making can vary. The difference between these 2 tools is just that obviously this is a larger tool, this is quite small, hence why it's found in schools. I suspect these are found in schools. And the speedball has a much better grip on this section that holds the blade, and then also it has somewhere for you to put the blades when they're not in use, which is actually really handy. So something I like are these tools. These are made in China, and these are quite nice fine versions of the ones that you are going to be using. So if we find our large V tool, so they're very similar tools, however this set here have got a nice fine blade to them, and again you have your U tool, V tool, small chisel, small sword. Another set, these are Japanese, so Japanese metal is notoriously stronger, and you probably wouldn't find yourself sharpening these very often. It won't be coming across in the video, but you can see on these ones that they are incredibly sharp. These are absolutely lovely to work with. The finer ones, these are nice to work with as well. In terms of budget, these come in around the £20–25 mark for a set, whereas the kinds of tools that you will see many seasoned printmakers using will be the file tools, and these come in at, I don't know, it might be around £25 a tool. So in comparison, these are quite a nice purchase, because obviously if you're sticking with the V tool, U tool, whilst you're a beginner, you might feel like this isn't cost effective, but I wouldn't discount the chisel and sword. So for £20–25 you get one file tool, or you get a pack, and you know there's nothing stopping you, as you get to know about these tools, having a couple of these and a couple of packs, and you may even have one of these tools in your kit as well. So something I like to do when I get a new tool is I like to put it on my reference. This is a piece of grey lino covered with black acrylic, and this just shows up my carved line much better. Some artists do like to coat the lino that they're going to be actually working with black. Personally, I don't do that. I do find it really difficult to see my lines when I've painted it black, but for the having this reference at hand, so when I am choosing a tool to use, I will know which this is. So for instance, at the top here we've got some marks made by Power Grip small V, which is this one. Power Grip large V, a file 11/7. So what I would say is these Power Grip tools, these are Japanese, and so as I said before, the metal used in Japanese tools is so much more durable and stronger. It's a much better quality. There are some tools out on the market that look very similar to these Japanese tools, but what you can do is get your sort of Google camera to translate the packet if you're not sure, because I believe some are actually made in China but passed off as Japanese metal, and it's quite important because there is a difference between the two. So this tool here, this is my hangito, and this is a Japanese sword tool. As I just referred, I may not be pronouncing it correctly, but I read it as hangito. And so this is a version of sword that's in your pack, and when we get into the class a little bit further down the line, I will show you how I use this. So when choosing or drawing a design to be used as a linocut, there are just a few things to consider. as drawings and photographs rarely convert to Linocuts without some tweaking. A Linocut design is really guided by the tools that you use. So when we look at examples of different approaches to Linocut and look at the different marks that your tools can make, you will feel more comfortable with choosing a design you would like to work with. You will understand better what is involved in being able to get the result in the design that you're after. So when we are approaching our Linocut design, we are looking at our source design through the lens of objects and shapes and textures, whilst realising our areas of light and dark. So, as always, there are exceptions to the rule. For example, some Linocut artists create some fantastic work using monochromatic pure line. If we just have a look at an example by Matisse. So in this print, Matisse has carved single lines into the block. The block is inked black and printed as is. However, in contrast, if we look at these examples of German expressionist woodcuts, the artist is creating a scene rich in drama and emotion. The carved lines are as coarse, edgy and dramatic as the image itself. In this portrait I produced for a friend, I've taken an original photograph, sketched it and then highlighted areas of light and dark to carve. As the lady is looking out the window, the light is on her face, which then plunges her background into darkness. So what we're going to do here is just have a look at producing a Linocut. And to do this, we are going to look at using carbon paper and a source image. You don't have to do this exercise with your lino. I know there's only a few pieces in your kit, and we are going to cover a couple of different types of approaches to your lino. But if you want to follow along on this, and then you can decide at the end if this is something that you want to use your lino for. So this is a line drawing that I did ages ago. It's been sitting in my sketchbook, not really understanding or knowing what I want to do with it. I just knew that it would come into play at some point, so here we are. So with transferring to your lino, something that you need to consider is the orientation of your image. So once you have carved into your lino and your paper is placed on top and your print is taken, you are going to take your paper away and have a mirror image. Now, when it's carved into your lino, it needs to be the reverse of what you want. So for instance, if you had a number 7, you wouldn't carve your number 7 in that direction. You would carve your 7 in that direction. Now when you have a source image like this, and I'm obviously going to want to do these lines over here. Now by transferring it this way, so I will have the knee in this direction. When I print it, the knee is going to be in that direction. So I have already reversed this. Now, if you've got an image and you don't have the printer or the ability to reverse it, whatnot, then you can just graphite the back and reverse it by putting it on another piece of paper, perhaps even putting it against a window and going over your lines in that way. and then you'll have it reversed here. Carbon knee will be over here, and as you print it, it'll be this way around. So because this is quite a simple line drawing, and actually if I was just to put my carbon over here now, possibly line it up approximately, I think the image is slightly bigger than the lino, I can probably hold all of this in one go and just go over it. But if your line drawing is a little bit more complicated than this, and you may have to come away from it a few times, I will show you just a quick way that you can register it. This is an approach that you take when you're doing a reduction lino cut. You don't ordinarily have to worry too much when you're dealing with a single colour. However, it is really handy, so I am going to use the cutting mat as a guide. So using this guide here, I'm just going to line up my lino there. That's going to be, this line here is going to be where it will sit. What I could do is cut these sections here, but leave this section, and you'll see why in a moment. But because I think we can do this without having to, so we've got the bottom edge here, side edge, we want a bit more of that knee, so let's bring it over here. Don't mind the knee being cut off a little bit. Got the corner of the chair. I think that's going to do for this demonstration. And then what I will do now is just tape my paper. I tend to put my hand down on here and just in a relaxed way let it fall where it's going to fall. And now making sure that's in place, you'll be able to bring your paper over into the same place each time. If you think that you're going to lose your way with where your lino is going to sit, just stick a bit of tape down there. What you can do without the cutting mat is just have a piece of cardboard. I keep the backs of sketchbooks all the time. They're quite sturdy and they're quite good for this process, especially with reduction lino cut. You'll see in my, if you do reduction lino cut, you'll notice in the class video for that I use what's called turns Burton pins. But that's something else, we won't get into that now. So that's where the lino is going to sit each time. So if I knock this or I have to go away and I come back, I can just bring my lino back into this position. You might want to press your lino down a little bit because lino, being a natural product, does curve. Bring it back over and it's always going to sit back there. So I am going to quickly put these lines in so that we can move to the next stage. So I think that's fine. My carbon paper has been used quite often, so my lines came out quite faint, but I've gone over them with paint with pencil. So now what we can do is approach this for a carve, and I'll show you which tool in the set that we would use for this. So in all of our kits, I supply slip mats. Slip mats are really good for keeping your lino in place. Schools will have bench hooks. They hook on the bench. They have a L shape, top or bottom, and it's designed to keep your lino in place because you're going to apply pressure and you're going to be pushing it, and you don't want it to be sliding around. So slip mats are really handy for that. I don't get on with bench hooks, so I do prefer slip mats. So we are going to be doing a single line carve for this, and we will be using the V tool. The V tool is as it says, so you'll see that the blade has a V to it. So we're going to be using that one. So when we come to carve, if you've done any of this before, you're going to know this. Please skip past this if this is a bit too self-explanatory for you. However, for some people, even myself, needs this as a reminder every now and then. And as I demonstrate, you are going to see me break all the rules. So the idea is that you keep your hands behind the blade. And so as you carve, you do this. Now, my carving style is that I use this finger to guide my tool, which inevitably means that sometimes it's going to go towards this finger. And so, I've had a few accidents. The idea is that you move your lino rather than your body. As I carve, I have a sort of rotation of about this before I start to move my lino. So if I was approaching this sleeve here, I would probably have my hand here, I would start my carve here, and I probably will have my finger guiding my tool like that. I wouldn't then attempt this line over here because I am going to have to come around this way, and my body isn't in a comfortable position, and that is when mistakes happen, and you can start to be carving and you'll slip and shoot off in a direction you don't want to be, and in that event sometimes it's a no going back and you have to ditch that piece of lino. If you're lucky and you've shot a line somewhere that you can adjust the design, you can do that and you can use that line, but the best thing to do is to be moving your lino. Now, this drawing here does have a really nice fluid line, and when we think about Matisse's as that example, it had some lovely lines that just seemed to go on forever, as though the carve had been continuous. Now, I don't know how that line was done. It could be that it was done in that way. What I would say is, as a beginner, and with this design, we're not going to be doing that. We are going to be looking at these as short individual lines. If we attempted to do a continuous line, we have got to really be moving our body around, and as a beginner I can't imagine that that is going to be a very comfortable approach. I think that you'll make quite a few mistakes. So looking at the lines on here, the lines that I might look at first will be ones that come away off the edge of the lino. So I would probably start over here. The reason for that is, as I get used to this design and used to my tool, if I am going to slip, I want to slip off the edge of the lino. If I come in at this angle and I make any mistakes and I shoot past this line here, that's not something that I want to do. So I would start here. This lino feels a little bit hard. I'm just going to go and put this by the radiator for a moment. I'm filming this in the winter. It's quite cold in here, so this lino is a bit cold and hard, so I'm just going to go and warm it up. That's better. It's much more flexible. If you need to do that, what I would say is just put it somewhere warm, not hot. Don't leave it too long in the sun if you're using a sunny window. Being a natural product made out of cork and oils, the oils eventually do dry out of lino. This is the reason why lino in schools can be quite hard and brittle and hard to use with those student tools, because it's generally old lino. But warm it up and you'll find it a lot easier to use. So, as I said before, I'm going to be starting the line like this. I am probably, until I get the feel for these tools, I'm going to go fairly light in this line. So rather than digging into the carve or going as deep as possible, if I go deep, I'm going to go wide with this tool. So I'm going to keep it as straight going into the carve as possible. So I'm using very little of my V-blade. I'm trying not to use my finger to guide, because I'm just aware that that is going to hide the blade and what it's doing. So I do have a curled off line here. I have, as I've done a shallow cut, I've just curled it off a little bit at the end, so that as I come around here, I will then curl it off a little bit to the left and hopefully capture that curve. The temptation is to really dig into the lino. What you're trying to do is just carve a shallow line on the surface of the lino rather than a deep cut in. It does take a little bit of practice. To have a consistent line. What you might find as a beginner, that your lines are varying widths, and that will be the depth at which your tool is going into the lino. If you feel the tool going in too deep, just bring it back and put your line over the surface. Rather than you're in deep, don't continue and don't carve in to come out, because to carve in to come out, you will have, so this is the line that we are currently achieving. If you go in, you get a deeper line, but you get a wider line. And for the print, you don't need the depth that you've achieved with this wider line. You can still get a print from going over a shallow line like that. A lot of the time as beginners, we will start off well, and then we'll suddenly dig in a bit, and then we'll scoop up to come out. And oh, we've gone back a bit deep, come up and try and get it shallow again. And then you end up with this kind of line. if you're doing your line and you feel yourself go deep, bring your tool back. So I'm just going to take a moment to talk about where I am finishing a line off. So you probably noticed that as we go, I am taking a line. I get so far and I'm flicking the lino off. That's really comes into play where I came here and I just realised I'm going to want to put a curve in that, so I let the lino, this lino is great because it just snaps, and so it leaves you that line there. When you are using the plastic surfaces, the easy carve surfaces, you don't have the ability to do that. The product is far too rubbery, so as you're doing a line, if I left that, I can't snap it off and I have to pull it. Now what happens when you pull that is, I mean, I was lucky there, but it leaves a, it can tear the rubber. Something else that the rubber, there's a downside with the rubber, is you'll notice in some of the other examples that we may do that we use this mark here to indicate something. We might be using it as a an area to add shade. It could be marks in a pavement, in a wall, whichever. And we want to snap it off and create this mark here. The rubber, the easy carve surfaces don't allow a very easy way to do that. So you would have to I can't get that off. And so with the grey lino, go in and you can snap it off like that. So if you've decided to have a go at a line cut like this, and things don't work out, and you feel, you know, you've carved through your design, or it's not turned out how you wanted it, perhaps it's looking far too sort of jaggedy and you haven't got nice sort of straight lines, and you've ended up with something a little bit more like this. Don't despair with it. These small pieces of lino, they're available in Hobbycraft. They come in packs of 10. I think the packs of 10 are the most economical way to buy them. The hang packs, where you get sort of 2 per pack, I don't think those are the most economical. I think it's probably more pricey to buy them that way. But the packs of 10 are great, and that way you can do a bit more practicing. If coating your lino in black is your thing, because actually you want to see your lines a lot better, then by all means. The transfer of the image onto lino covered in black will be a little more tricky. I mean, I can see that it's not the best, but if it's something that you can work with, so if you have good lighting and you've used your carbon, and then you can see the line enough to be able to go over with your pencil. Pencil shows up quite nice on black acrylic. I think every now and then, I mean, we don't have any at the time of filming this, but of course it'll be a completely different time when you're looking at this. But in the Etsy shop that I have, sometimes I may have some of those packs of 10 in, if you're struggling to find them anywhere. There's quite a lot of good sort of next day suppliers out there, reasonable cost. I would, because of your tools that you have in this kit, I would say, and I am biased, lean towards grey lino rather than the plastic versions. Not just from an environmental perspective, but from the sort of downsides that I've just explained to you. If we were using the red handle student tools, I would probably be steering you towards the Easy Carve surfaces, because they're a lot easier to use. We'll do a little trial of it using these 2 pieces of lino when we finish this. Okay, I think we've carved every line. I am going to rub out the pencil marks and we will take a print. Before we do that, we'll just have a go at showing you the red handle tools, how they handle these 2 different surfaces. Remember, this is the same as this product, grey, Hessian backed, and this is the plastic polymer. Okay, so because I do classes, I have quite a lot of blades here already for student tools. I will just find one. I think so in this pot here you have blade 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and SD's version of a sword, I believe. I've never used that one. So blade 1, I believe, is supposed to be the same sort of shape and size as a feel sort of 12.1. However, there is a huge difference between the 2. I don't get on very well with the number 1 of the SDs. Number 2 is a V. Number 3 is a shallow U. Number 4, I can't decide if that's a V or a U. It's somewhere in between. Number 6, a very shallow U. Number 7 has this kind of square shape to it. I don't use those very often. Number 8, a nice big chunky U, and number 9 is a V, probably the closest in similarity we're going to get to the tool that we're using right here. Yeah. So we're unscrewing the neck of the tool. The blade, sometimes people get confused with this. The section where the number is the section that goes into the tool. And then you tighten the neck up, and then it's ready to use. That's quite a nice line. So the resistance on the grey lino was a lot greater than the plastic. Now if I want to do some mark making, so for our next exercise, I am going to come back to this German Expressionist woodcuts book and explain that I have taken a piece of traced paper, I've put my piece of lino over, and I have drawn a square, drawn a line around the lino. Just to indicate the shape and size of the lino that I'm going to be using for practice. And then I have flicked through this book earlier. What I want to do is I want to place my tracing paper over an area of interest that I might like to try. Sorry, I'll try and not to get my head in the way. That could be quite interesting to do. I think though for this exercise we want to be looking at shape and form. I think we might just get a bit distracted by what this image is actually about, rather than concentrate on the shapes and the marks that we're trying to make. I think this one could be quite interesting. I'm just going to take that in place. This book is German Expressionist Woodcuts, Shane Weller, in case this is your kind of thing. I understand it's not everybody's style of linocut, but for the purposes of explaining how to approach the mark making and twisting your head around the sort of light and dark, looking at things as objects and light and dark, I think that this is quite a good example. So we've got our V tool that we used in our line, and we have our small U tool, and we have our large U tool. I am just going to put this sword tool to one side because I think there's going to be an opportunity to show you how I would use it and how I use my hangy toe in my own work. So I am going to start out very similar to how we did on our line drawing. I am just going to indicate areas of white. For instance, the areas that are quite nice bulky areas of white. These sections here may be the last thing that I do, so I'm going to have a look at these areas that are going to be are going to be white. Like I said, for you, if you wanted to, you can either colour in the areas that you're going to remove, or colour in the areas that are to stay. Make the decision before you start and stick to it, because it gets very confusing when you switch those over. I am not going to colour anything in. I feel that the size of this and having the source image there, I should be able to follow it quite nicely. And I am going to be taking this section here, coming around the nose, coming up the bridge of the nose, and taking out this large section up here, which is all white. I'm going to be making a trench. So like in our other piece of lino, we did our line drawing. I am going to do lines around these sections of white, so that when I am using my U tool inside the section of white, the tool is discouraged from jumping over this line trench that I have put here. Let me demonstrate what I mean. So what we've got now is this section here. We now want to, if we were to take this V tool and do many lines going across, we're going to have a lot of ridges to have to keep carving away. That can get quite difficult. However, if we have a look at using our U tool, we can go straight to using quite a large U tool here, but I want to just demonstrate what I mean. So starting from here, we have a trench line along here, and we're going to start at the beginning . I'm going to use the large one. And when we get to here, we're naturally stopped from going further. If we were to put quite a lot of pressure into it, we can skip over this line. By putting it there, it is not foolproof. Okay, so those are approaches to doing it that's going to help you stay within your lines. When you've created the carve within the area, the lines that are left behind by the carving tool, you may decide that you want to keep some of those lines. In traditional Linocut, you can often see the lines left behind from the tools. That is a purposeful thing that the artist has done. They have either left them there or they have carved them away because they'd like quite a nice clean print. Now, if you're not sure which way you're going to go with it and you decide to carve and leave it relatively shallow with ridges, take a print and see how you like it. My advice would be, when you are making your carved lines, not these straight lines, but when you're clearing lino away, I would do it in the direction of the features. So if it was a field and you had a field going across there and the normal flow of the land was to go this way, do your carving in that way so that you have the option to keep those lines as part of the print, or once you've taken that proof print, you don't like them, carve them away. It at least gives you the option. If I were to just do vertical lines there, and then I took a proof and thought, I don't want those ridges, the actual movement in the face goes this direction, and so it's always a really good idea to stick with the movement of the face. So as I come up the bridge of the nose, I will clear in that direction. As I come under the cheek, I may come under and down. Okay, what we are going to do now is we are going to be looking at creating a stamp. So this is where you are going to create a graphical object. So if you have a look at the box that your kit came in, apologies to anybody doing this class without this kit, but if you look at the examples on the side of this kit, this is the sort of thing that I'm talking about. So the design on this kit was actually made in the exact same way that I'm going to demonstrate to you now. So what I did was I sketched out a couple of stamp designs. You can get this material here in a larger form, so if you have a larger stamp, I mean some of these have been sort of altered in size by the, well actually no they haven't been, some of these look like the same size as the design. So sketched out onto here, and then using the V tool in our tool set, we just carve around it, carve these areas of white, and then you have your stamp. This material is called Mastercut, I believe, and I think it is by the British company Esdi, so you may find this in Hobbycraft. So the design for this, after I had created quite a lot of designs using this, I stamped them all to this sheet of rice paper, and this sheet of paper here is the original sheet that was scanned in to send off to the box company to do the design on here. So this rice paper, I can't remember where it's from. It's incredibly tough. This kit has been around for around 6 years, and so this sheet of paper has been shoved at the back of drawers, fallen down the back of drawers, ended up in numerous folders, a few studio moves, and it's resisted all of that. So if you wanted to create wrapping paper or anything like that, then I do recommend trying a rice paper. It's quite cheap as well. So if we take our tracing paper and we choose one of these designs, we can then transfer it onto our piece of Mastercut, carve it out and create a stamp. So this master cut has got a slightly rough side and a smooth side. I always go for the smooth side, and it takes a rubbing from tracing paper really well. If your design is a bit smaller than mine, I would go to the edges of your block so that you can possibly use the leftover for something else. We're not going to be able to do that with this, so we're just going to get it straight in the middle. So holding it down secure, you can just rub over. I think ideally I would have sharpened my pencil. Got quite a blunt pencil, so my lines are very thick. I've only used a HB for tracing paper. I find anything like a 2B onwards just to be too messy when you get your hand rubbing over an area when you're doing lino cut. You do need some nice clear lines. That'll do. I'm actually not going to, well, I said I'm not going to draw over it, but that line just needs, I don't want to draw over it too much because as I'm carving I don't want to rub the lines off, the graphite off. I've got enough on there to do what I need to do with the carve. So we are going to use the V tool. I am going to make lines out to the sides, away from the centre. I don't want to slip and bring my tool across the design. If I slip, I'd prefer to slip outways to the areas of the block that I'm not going to be using. Okay, at this stage you can either use your tool or your U tool to carve out from your design that way. but I much prefer to take a scalpel and take all the remaining block away, and that's so that when stamps are put face down onto your paper rather than your paper over the top and that burnishing movement. You can do that, but if you are doing many stamps on this area like this, you want to be able to see your placement, so cutting it out on the outside is a much better approach. So I have some items from the kit laid out here. Items not in the kit, the spoon and the tray. So in terms of rolling ink out, a tray is not always necessary. You can use a spare mat, you can use a tray, you can use a piece of perspex, you can use the back of a picture frame, anything that you're not precious about and that you're happy to roll the ink out onto. Even though these are water-based inks, they do actually have quite a high colour content, and so it has been known for them to stain a surface, so I'd be quite careful with your kitchen surface or anything that you're precious about. Something that you can just take to the sink and clean would be fantastic. Now the spoon, I will get into that. It's unlikely that we're going to need it for what we're doing, but I will explain as we're going the reasons for that. So in terms of rolling your ink out, the idea is that when you roll your ink out, is that you roll it out to the width of your roller. Now that it starts out that way, but as time goes on, that area can get bigger and bigger, and the reason for that is that when you roll your ink out and you do a print after a print after a print, this section can become thinner, thicker, and as you're rolling your ink to get the right consistency, you make that area bigger. So these three, I'm going to put them over that way because I realised I haven't cleaned these properly. These three are my workhorses, and I particularly prefer these SD rollers to this student roller. So what I mean by the size of the roller is this. One of these is for fabric. I think it's this blue one. I don't use it for fabric. I use it for a standard roller, and then this, need to clean that. This is my roller that I generally use a lot of the time. This one is from Iron Bridge Printmakers. It's a little on the heavy side, but I like that. And I particularly like the stand. So we probably have enough ink on our roller, and we are going to now take a print. We can take a print of our first carve. The first print that you take is always very patchy. Once you have a layer of ink down on your block and you've attempted a couple of prints with it, you notice that the prints get better and better because you have that underlying layer of ink on it. So make sure that I am going to put a piece of newspaper down. Make sure that your block is completely covered with ink. Using a larger roller, you will notice that you probably do not need to be applying the ink in the same way that I am here. You'll find that as you roll your ink out and you go over your block, that you get a sufficient coverage without having to go over it several times. But with these student rollers, I'm afraid that is the So I'm not going to overdo it because I can already see that there's ink inside some of my lines. It shouldn't matter. We'll see. The paper that I'm using here is a rice paper. When you're doing Linocut by hand like this without a press and you're a beginner, the thinner paper that you can use, the better. The thicker it goes, the harder that first experience is going to be. When you use your burnisher, this is called a Baron, and the idea is that you apply the pressure this way. The piece of paper is, because this is quite thin rice paper, and it's small circular movements. With thin rice paper, you don't need a huge amount of burnishing, and you probably won't need the spoon. So the spoon is used when you have stubborn areas of ink transfer. Some people just use a spoon altogether. Some people don't use Barons. Some people who work quite small, they have a nice large wooden spoon or tablespoon, and they keep that, and they just only ever use that. And it is actually quite sufficient if you're doing quite small work. So this first print is quite patchy. Like I said before, once we get another layer of ink down, we won't have so much of that patchiness. It's a very good idea to clean your lino before, in between carving and inking, because you do get quite a lot of dusty bits left over with this grey Hessian. You can do that a couple of ways. You can use blue tack, use a piece of blue tack in your hands for a while, warm it up and just press it into some of your areas, and that'll take the dust out of some of these corners. You can use a dry paintbrush. What I wouldn't do is go scrubbing at it with anything. You might have some fine lines that you've carved and you could potentially scrub that fine line away. I am just going to give this one a quick once over with some blue tack. So what you might find when you come to ink a block the first time is where we talked about these areas. If you have not been deep enough with your white areas, you might get that those ridges showing. I think in some quarters that's called chatter. It's just the ridges where your tool has created, and if you haven't carved deep enough, when you come to roll the ink over, those ridges are going to come through on your print. Those ridges can make your print look really quite authentic as a lino cut. So if you are not too deep with them at first, take a proof, see what you like. If you have to do more carving, clean your block with a wipe and then carve those ridges away and go printing again. So what we're going to do now is that proof print, just to see what these ridges look like, whether it's something that we want to keep in the print. Again, we'll probably find that this first print is quite patchy, but because it's the proof print, I don't think we're going to be too concerned about this first one. It's always really satisfying when that ink first goes down. I think we'll line the paper up a little better on this one. So I quite like that. I actually thought it was going to be this section round here that would show the ridges a lot more, because I thought this was the more shallow carve. But I quite like those ridges in the forehead. So personally, I would leave it like that. So let's give our stamp a go. You don't have to use this printmaking ink on this stamp. You can use stamp inks. The best ones that you can get in terms of the colour density is these Japanese Versacraft. These can also be used on fabric. So if you have created stamps and you want to then print your own fabric, these are a great way to do that. So I think I mentioned before about the water-based inks. Now, when I mentioned them drying out, this was the area that can become a problem. Obviously, when you've printed on your paper, the drying time, you want it to be relatively fast. You don't want to have your prints out hanging for a long period of time. They can get dusty, get dust in the ink, a whole variety of problems. And if, like my early days, using the back of my kitchen, that can become a real problem with steam and just the general comings and goings of your kitchen. So having a quick drying time on paper is fantastic. However, if you've got the heating on whilst you're doing this process, this ink will evaporate, the water in it will evaporate quite quickly. I'm not saying be freezing cold, not at all, but I'm a bit of a wallflower and I love it hot. But I have to turn the heating down if I'm using water-based inks. So with this, you are going to want to have your paper out and then press your stamp down. Being the rubber squishy quality that this surface is, it gives you that nice springiness when you apply the pressure. So obviously we've used black for this stamp, but you can use whatever colours that you like. You can use different colours. If you're going to be working relatively small with several different stamps, then I would definitely recommend using the Versacraft stamps. The stamps that you get in the high street shops, you will find they're fine, and after a few stamps you'll get a pretty good coverage, and then they start to dry out almost immediately. Again, price is an indicator. I think these Versacraft and Versacolour stamps, I think you can get them online anywhere between £4 and £6 each, but they do last a long time and have got a pretty sizable coverage compared to the ones that you can get in Hobbycraft. But equally, if you've got printmaking inks, water-based inks other than just the black, by all means experiment, get a bit more master cut, create yourself a variety of stamps, and I'm sure you can come up with something a little bit more creative than I've done here for the demo.